This is Revs Confidential with Julian Cardillo and Frank DeLapa.
Revs Confidential indeed. We're back. But this time around, we have a guest because better things. What's it called? What's that expression that I'm looking for? Best things come in threes.
Yeah.
There we go.
Things come in threes.
There we go.
Do the Italian one, Julian, then you come to mind quicker.
Will it? I don't know.
No, non ci sono due senza tre.
There we go. That's pretty good. Non ci sono
bring
due
that
senza tre.
up.
How's your Italian, Caleb?
My Italian's not good. My Spanish is okay, but I want to start practicing my French so I can speak to more of the Revs players in French.
Well, I botched that intro, but usually I'm a little bit more seamless, but I'm distracted on account of our guest today on Revs Confidential. We have the very talented, the very debonair Caleb Pongratz from my old stomping grounds, Prost America.
Yes.
Caleb, welcome on board to Revs Confidential.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's gonna be fun. Let's chat Revs.
Absolutely. So it totally is going to be fun, and I'll tell you why it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun because the Revolution have a big press conference tomorrow morning, Monday morning. They're going to be welcoming Matt Turner back to the team, which, this happened very quickly. Frank, you're the resident historian among journalists. I can't really think of a time when an international transfer ever took, it was ever this fast. This seems historically fast to be like, yeah, that's our guy. Let's bring him over. Now, granted, there are some extenuating circumstances with Turner, but he's going to be there tomorrow morning, guys, and so's Kurt Analfo to answer some questions.
Yeah, no. Are you saying that I haven't seen anything quite like this? No, it happened kind of that quickly, and also I'm going to just throw in that I'm not sure that Turner was. I mean, he's always been the Revolution's guy, but I never thought that he was the target for this transfer window. Nobody thought that until recently, and so it did really happen quickly. But I think it's kind of a change of direction for what the original blueprint was for this roster.
Yeah, kind of building off what Frank just said, I think it's kind of interesting to see how quickly this just came to fruition, because obviously the Revs have been looking at Alja Ivičić as their starter, and then randomly, just as the window starts, Matt Turner's deal from Crystal Palace or Nottingham Forest really to Lyon just kind of explodes in itself, and then hey, he's coming to the Revs. Kind of crazy to see that all transpire in such a short period of time, and now Matt's coming in to get prepared for the World Cup. It's a massive move.
So I want to just dissect this a little bit because the Revs fans are pretty smart about what they see on the field, right? If you told any of them, what's the position of need going into the transfer window, what would you say? And I bet you 10 out of 10 of them would not say goalkeeper. But maybe they would. I'm interested to see what you have to say, Caleb. For me, the problem with this team is that
he may have froze.
And it got very shaky. I think that was with loss of confidence. But then I think the offense never really picked up the slack, and that put a lot of pressure on the back line. And so that's put a lot of balls in the back of the net. But for me, I would have said you need a better striker. You need some cover in on the wings because earlier this season, Chancalay wasn't doing it. Langoni certainly hasn't been doing it. Diaz has been really dangerous as a speed merchant, but hasn't been really scoring goals. But Caleb, I'm really interested to hear from you about your take on this goalkeeper situation.
Yeah, I mean it's very interesting. It's very weird, really. Alja Ivičić obviously has been the Revs guy for the last this season and last season. He's been working diligently to get a green card, and then randomly again Matt Turner comes in. So it's a weird scenario, but I would say a lot of fans at least that I've spoken to have said that goalkeeper is a massive need, as well as a forward that could score goals. But looking at the bigger picture, Alja Ivičić broke a record last year. It's not a record you don't want to have. And it was most goals allowed in a single season by a Revs goalkeeper. He allowed 56 goals last year and broke Jeff Casey. He broke his record of 55 that was set in 1998. So not a record you really want to have. And kind of bringing in someone like Matt Turner, yes, it's not, hey, we're going to score goals, but it's certainly going to keep a lot of goals out of the net, especially for this team that I believe had 74 goals allowed last season. They really do need a better goalkeeper. And not to say Aljaž Ivičić is the problem, but again, getting Matt Turner, that's a big replacement. That's a positive move. Whereas if you get someone that's a striker, are they going to be better than Ganago? Are they going to be better than Chankalai? Are they going to be better than Campana? Bringing Matt Turner in, he's the U.S. either number 1 or number 2. And going into the Gold Cup with him being moved to the number 2, you're getting the U.S. men's national team, aka starter or backup, as your starting goalkeeper now. And anyone who thinks Matt Turner's coming in to be a backup here, laughable. He's starting games. I will be shocked if he's not starting against DC United on the 9th. Matt Turner is a huge upgrade, and I think a lot of fans at least the fans that I've spoken to, are happy about this move. There's just a few that are saying, what's next?
All right, so maybe I'm in the minority. Maybe I'm in the minority then. Frank, I'm going to be curious to hear your take. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get to that. I think I briefly lost signal, and I've retweeted out this link, so pay attention to your X's. But Frank, over to you. I think I agree with a lot of what Caleb said. It's an upgrade no matter what way you slice it, and I think the stars aligned in just the right, perfect way where Turner needed playing time. Lyon really couldn't afford to keep him. Nottingham Forest didn't want him, and the Revolution need to show that they're doing something.
Yeah, no, I think you're dissenting on this, so Julian. I think you summed it up really good there. But I think that's not the position that the Revolution need to fill. The problem is you only have 3 DP or whatever spots. That doesn't need to be filled. I know he could switch out of DP next year, but you got 10 games left this year. You need to bring in a starting striker. And I think they've had 4 years to really find a guy up front. So I don't think it's that hard. So I think you can guarantee you bring in a top level striker, but you'd have to pay for it. So the other thing is, what I don't like about this deal is, I think all the fans are really happy to see Turner back. I agree with Caleb. I mean, everybody loves Matt. The guy, he's an upgraded, great guy, and he's a winner too. But saying that, this is not his first choice. Obviously, his agents, I think, must have shopped him all over the world. Or if they weren't doing their job. And he ended up here. It's almost out of desperation. I think it's kind of crazy. If Matt wanted to come back and it was first choice and it was the right thing, it would have happened a while ago. So it doesn't sound exactly right to me. Could still work out.
Well, I was surprised, Frank, that he was going to command he did command 8 million euros to go to a fairly established team. I mean, I know that they're financially in turmoil right now, but that's a lot of money for a goalkeeper who's been struggling the last at least year and a half, maybe 2 years. But
I'm going to say that doesn't ring true either, because I think Fonseca's the coach there, right? I don't think he necessarily ever wanted Matt Turner. I don't hear him fighting. Geez, I really, so I'm not sure how that actually came about or if that was ever going to work. So yeah, credit to the agents for getting that transfer fee, and then they ended up having to fight to keep it. But yeah, something is just not quite clicking here.
Yeah, I think going off of what Frank was just saying, again, I think there was uncertainty off of Lyon's goalkeeper situation. I think with their 3 goalkeepers that they had rostered, they had Justin Benguy, Anthony Lopez, and I believe there was another goalkeeper that I believe just secured a transfer. I think he just left the club. So Matt was coming in initially to play at Lyon, but with the uncertainty of their president, I believe it was their acting president was American. He kind of got shifted out of the club and replaced, and the new owners or the new presidency was kind of just hey, we're getting rid of everything that's Americanized within this club. And that's kind of why that Matt Turner was kind of kicked to the curb. And again, that whole situation was crazy. I think from sources that I spoke to, Matt was looking at a lot of options this summer. He was thinking of being a backup at a top 5 Premier League team. He was thinking about Germany, Italy, France, and if all thing went south, MLS was his choice. However, that's still option 4 or 5 when it comes to the pecking order, because top 5 MLS or top 5 Premier League backup, you're not going to play. I don't know what you're really looking for. A starter on a bottom Premier League team, you're going to let in 40 goals a week. Like that's not great. And then Germany, France, or Italy, you're looking at option 6 in MLS. But again, coming back to the Revs, good for him, positive. He's going to get minutes before the World Cup. But again, what Frank was alluding to, this was not option 1 for Matt. It would no shadow of a doubt was not option 1. He did not want to come here to MLS initially. It just, things worked out in his favor through the bad situations that he's been through.
Yeah, I think all that's fair, and we've had a lot of conversations about that in the background. You and I have talked about it too, Caleb. I'm astounded that he didn't want to go to maybe a medium size or a small size club that was maybe punching above its weight. So I love to talk about FC Copenhagen, in part because I went to Copenhagen 3 years ago. But he needs a team like that, in my opinion. The Revs will certainly take him. It is an upgrade. Someone's got to do a story on Alija Ivičić. I might raise my hand for that one. Because that's a tough position for him to be in. Because I don't think he's been bad, right? I think there are a whole array of reasons why the Revolution have been letting in goals, and I think the guy in between the net is just one of them. And by the way, if Turner plays on August 9th, I will not be shocked to see the Revolution give up 2 goals, just based on what we've seen from this team. And maybe we'll get into the X's and O's a little bit later. Frank, I want to pick up on something that you said. You brought up how he's a DP, that you feel like, maybe it's not the best use of that slot, at least right now. I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I think this is maybe the most elegant way they can use the DP slot and still maintain some flexibility going into the next season. Because I think the writing is on the wall that they're probably not going to make the playoffs in 2025. They're just too far out of it. I think the whole roster needs an overhaul, and they're going into this arrangement knowing that Turner's going to be TAM eligible next year, which means that they have the ability to bring in at least one more DP next year and basically free up that slot. So I kind of like this move. It enables a new coaching staff potentially, or even a new GM or technical director to come in and say, all right, we know that we're opening up at least one DP slot. We have probably the best goalkeeper in the player pool on our team who's TAM eligible. Let's roll. So from that point of view, I get that it's not like a great short-term thing. And I would say that if the Revolution were more of a playoff team this year, it would bother me a little bit more. But I think this is actually a pretty smart move.
Well, I don't know. It just doesn't ring completely true to me. I just don't know why Turner. I'm just going to go back, retract one more time on that. There's hundreds of teams in Europe, FC Copenhagen. There's all these teams. That's where I think Matt Turner needs to go. The other thing is he will absolutely stop more better. He's a great shot stopper, but Ivičić is actually pretty good with his feet. And the way this team plays, or the way they want him to play, Caleb Porter, most coaches want you to play. They want you to play out of the back with your goalkeeper. And, that's Matt's one weakness. He's not great with his feet. Saying that, no U.S. goalkeepers are that great with their feet. So that's what you get. And I would trade that with Matt Turner. I don't mind that. With him, you live with that's his flaw. But, you're giving that up with Ivičić is really pretty good feet back there, and they go through him a lot. So it's a trade-off, So just saying.
Yeah.
Well, one last thing that I'll just add in, Caleb, is that I think Nottingham Forest didn't do him any favors by having a transfer fee so high. So if 8 million euros was what was going to get it done, I think that is one of the reasons why he's coming to the Revs as well. And maybe we haven't talked about that. Maybe that's why the FC Copenhagens of the world and the Leches of the world weren't raising their hand for a guy like Turner.
Yeah, I think, and again, I'm going to pivot to the chat as well on what you just backed off. One of the questions was just asked, why do y'all think he didn't get looks anywhere else? I think that fee definitely is a considerable factor. Again, seeing that $8 million fee from Forrest Allen, I was baffled. I would have been shocked. I would have been shocked at $4 million for Turner. So seeing 8, which is double that, was insane. But kind of playing to Frank's point, like, I understand why they made Matt a DP now. It's half the budget charge, if I'm not mistaken. So it will work better for their salary constraints, and it will allow them to make decisions going into next year to move him to a TAM role. However, Ignatius Ganago, if he's signed in the offseason, is a DP. So now
Ganago has a clause. He actually had 2 clauses. He has to score a certain amount of goals to be automatically purchased. So they won't necessarily buy him, I don't think.
I
think Porter likes him, but if Porter's gone in October, I think there's just no way they're going to bring back a player who has fitness issues, who's in the national team picture, who doesn't score goals when he's in MLS. Like, I think he's a good player, and I don't think this is the right surroundings for him.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainties going into next year. And again, this is a roster that Caleb Porter built. You get Matt Turner in now as a DP. So in the hypothetical, if Caleb Porter isn't back here next year, you're bringing in a new coach, potentially even a new sporting director if things don't go the right way too. And are you restarting all over again? Because I know you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, like, this roster needs an overhaul. The Revs just did a roster overhaul. 21 guys left the team this year in some capacity, and they brought in, I think, 17 at this point. Matt makes it 18. Like, that's insane. And to add to that point, some of these guys are on salaries that are very team friendly, but there's still a couple that you're looking at like, wow, how are you getting paid this much? And it's causing roster constraints. So there's a lot of areas of focus and need that the Revs will have to look at. But again, going into the offseason, you're looking at 3 DPs, potentially 4 on your roster, hypothetically, because you got to buy Matt down or move Matt down. And are you signing Ganago? Like, there are so many uncertainties with this team right now that I don't think it's white and black. I think it's a rainbow. Like, there's a lot of colors to figure out to get it to white and black.
Well, you take the Turner out of it, right? Like, let's say it wasn't Matt Turner. Let's say it was
Rodrigo DePaul.
Yeah, Rodrigo. Well, no, I think the point I'm trying to make is that you don't want it to be a player that you would actually want on your team. Like, if it was some like Joe Schmo DP, I would be okay with just given where the Revolution are. Like, you know what? Hit pause, let this season play out, and then have as many assets available as possible for November when you bring on a new coach. And maybe this isn't fair. Maybe I'm making assumptions that I shouldn't be making, that the Revolution, given their current pace, are going to move on from Caleb Porter. But, you know, we talked about it in the show notes before, guys, about how now not 1 but 2 supporters groups have said they want not just Caleb Porter's head, but Curtin Alfo's as well. And now they're making high-profile moves, bringing in Matt Turner, using up a DP slot, doing things that have major implications, not just for this season, but for the following season. We didn't talk about this on the last episode, Frank, where we spent a lot of time on Porter. But when we recorded, only 1 supporters group had said, yeah, if results don't change, move on from Caleb Porter. But now the Rebellion have stepped in and said, no, we want the immediate firings of both Caleb Porter and Curtin Alfo. To me, that's hugely significant. And at some point, you know, the front office is going to have to start taking note.
Yeah, I think it's great that the fan groups, supporters groups, realize they have a say and they're speaking out. And I'm not saying one way or the other whether I condone that right now, but I understand. Look, last year was really a tough season. And the end of the 23 season was really tough for supporters. You know, I'm not really saying they're spoiled, but, you know, people got used to a certain standard of performance. And then this season's another throwaway season. You know, in any other country, certainly, you know, almost any team that had that level of success, I think the supporters groups would be coming out with that too. So I think that's got to be dealt with. I think it's a real factor. And, you know, again, I still go back to whether the players, it's up to the players. If they're supporting the coach and the administration, if they come to play, then I think you stay with them. But if there's any doubt, if people, you know, if players are not performing. If they're not there, if Caleb Porter loses the locker room, well, then the writing's on the wall.
Well, and I think that's the tough thing, right? So a lot of these guys come in because they're Caleb Porter's guys in one way, shape, or form, or he really creates a locker room that backs him. And like I said on last week's episode, I think some of these guys have been through a coaching change already, and they didn't like how it went down. They certainly didn't like it going down midseason. And even though they know that the results haven't been there, that they're not where they should be in the standings, that things just haven't gone well, and the coach probably deserves to go, I think the front office, just to play devil's advocate a little bit, I think that's one of the reasons why they're not getting rid of Porter, is because they'll lose the locker room worse than they did, or maybe as bad as they did when Bruce left. I think going through a coaching change in MLS is a traumatic experience, especially in the locker room like the Revolutions.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree as well. I think the Revs, personally, again, I think the Revs will make a change this season. At the end of this season. I think one of the reasons why Caleb Porter hasn't been fired is due to the fact that the Revs mathematically are not eliminated yet. I think Kurt Anolfo is not making that phone call just on that basis. And at the same time, if you're in Kurt Anolfo's shoes, if you make that phone call saying, "Hey, we're firing Caleb Porter," how easy is it for the ownership to look at him and go, "That's great. Well, you're going with him." Kurt Anolfo is in a bad position right now. He is, because obviously he picked Caleb Porter for this role. Caleb Porter hasn't done the job that he set out to do. And yeah, it's a bad scenario for all parties. And I guess looking at the bigger picture, I know you mentioned they're 10 points out. They have to catch up against Red Bull, NYCFC, and Chicago. They play Chicago twice. So that is a 6-point spread against them. If you're only 10 points back, you win both of those games, you're 4 points out. You need a little bit of help in those 8 games. I'm not saying it's impossible, but they're not out yet. The biggest issue is, can they get the results against the teams that they should get results against? And also, how much are we going to look back after the season and go, "Oh, the Revs who are playing DC this week, the Revs were up until the 91st minute, 1-0 against DC. And what happened? You left a guy wide open to the back post to score and drop 2 points." How quickly are we going to look back at games and go, could have had that one, or hey, should have had that one, and see the bigger picture? But I think that's the biggest reason.
There's a critical mass of those opportunities, though, of those moments across the season where they've let in untimely goals, where they've lost the lead, where they've just looked like crap out of halftime. I think that's why you've lost the season. In some ways, that 9-game unbeaten run was the worst thing to happen to the team, because it basically, I think, showed for a time anyway that Caleb Porter's tactics were working. And the thing with me this year has been the adjustments. It's great, you adjusted to the 3-5-2. Once teams scout the 3-5-2 and learn how to play against it, switching back to what made you bad at the beginning of the season and bad last year isn't going to help either. One last thing, going back to the Anolfo point. We maybe forget, but when Brad Friedel left, Mike Burns didn't leave immediately. Bruce Arena came in with a whole bunch of clout and was basically yeah, I am going to run this show, and anything to do with what goes on the field is up to me. And if that's the case, Mike Burns has to go. And so it is perfectly conceivable for the Revolution to maybe get rid of Caleb Porter, and then for the next coach to have some real clout and be yeah, if you want me, I'm not going to work with Kurt Anolfo. So that's a very, very real possibility as well.
Yeah, I think it's a little closer than we think, because obviously the Revs, if I'm looking back at the Friedel era, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Brad Friedel was fired on, I think, May 5th.
No, was it the 18th?
No.
That's right, the 5th. But it was the year was 20.
It was the 5th. It was the 5th of 2019, May 5th, 2019. He was fired. They had Mike Lapper for the game the 7th, the 12th, and then there was another game which was the 15th or the 16th. And when they fired Brad Friedel, and then they hired Bruce Arena on May 14th, Burns was fired on the 13th. So I believe Burns was let go 24 hours before they hired Bruce. They probably had something in stake, but like you said, backdoor saying, "Hey, if I'm coming in, I'm doing everything." So I'm not questioning that. But at the same time, I think if Caleb is let go, they need a decision in place. And if looking at Kurt Onalfo, if he wants to keep his role, how likely is he going to go and hire a coach that, hey, I don't want to do the sporting director and technical director thing. I just want to coach. But if you look at someone like, again, people have been saying it for months, but Jim Curtin's going to want to do both. He's not going to, I highly doubt Jim Curtin's going to want to come here and just coach.
Or at the very least want like a hand on the wheel, right? Like,
yeah, for sure. So I think the team will look at it in the bigger picture and go, okay, if we make this decision, what's our bigger picture? What decision do we go for after that? And if I look at Dominic Kinnear, Gio Savarese, Bob Bradley, Jim Curtin, just the people that were in the running before, and then obviously he's the messy signing of this offseason if you need one. Are they just want to coach? Do they want to do everything? How much change needs to go into that?
Well, Frank, one thing that we have spoken about is how they are very reticent to make midseason coaching changes. And looking back, right, they've never hired a coach who doesn't have at least some prior experience either playing or coaching in MLS. And so if I'm Bob Kraft, I'm kind of looking at the situation, knowing that the writing's on the wall and letting things play out. And then to Caleb's point, he probably has a decision made already to be like, yeah, we know we have to make a coaching change, but that decision needs to be made in concert with whatever we want to do with Kurt Onalfo. Like you can't just replace the coach and then get rid of Kurt and then rebuild the whole front office.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is a big dominoes would be falling all over the place on that. I don't think the Crafts really are prepared to do that. The Crafts are really good at running sports, running their business, and they do it by delegating. And they're really good at that. So if they get that right, if they get the sporting director right, the technical director right, if they get the general manager of the Patriots right, if they get all that stuff right, it works great. And they're pretty much hands off, especially on the Revolution. They're totally hands off. These guys will have total, autonomy to run the show, and you sink and swim, and all accountability, all the credit, and all the blame. So I don't really think they have a backup plan to bring in like another technical director. So I think Kurt's probably still in, and he'd have to make the call.
And kind of just building off that before you get into it, Julian, the Revs are entering the season, not just the first team in a huge uncertainty, but so is the second team. If I'm not mistaken, Richie Williams is out of contract at the end of the year. So there's not a head coach currently signed to coach next year for Revs 2 either. So you're entering an offseason where potentially you need to find a whole first team staff and a second team coach. That's a lot on your plate. And if you get rid of your sporting director too, that's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I did not imagine us going down the front office rabbit hole so early because I think there's actually still a lot to talk about with the transfer window. And so that's actually helpful context, though, I think, as we get into what else we can expect from the team this summer, because I have a feeling that there's more to come. Now, I don't know. First of all, I thought that the Revolution were really struggling for flexibility before they signed Turner. Now I think it's even less because they've changed their roster path. They've gone from the 2 DP setup to the 3 DP setup. So that creates a whole bunch of new issues as I'm listening to my dog my dog is currently running in her sleep and barking. You can hear it in the background. She's definitely thinking about Caleb Porter and Kurt Onalfo. But anyway, the Revs have been linked with a lot of names, both inward and outward. So Estudiantes was rumored to be interested in Thomas Chonkalai. That's, I think, a player that the Revolution may or may not want to get rid of. I mean, he's been in pretty decent form lately. He's been scoring goals. And then coming in, Dor Turgerman was linked with the team late last week as well. And that's like a big hulking experienced striker with Maccabi
Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv, yes. And, he was linked to some bigger clubs in Europe earlier this summer. So I kind of go back to what I was saying earlier, which is like, I don't want them to rush to make these moves because I don't want to overcommit resources going into 2026. And 2026 is a make or break year for the Revolution. I mean, they're co-hosting the World Cup. Gillette Stadium is hosting all those games up until the quarterfinal. There's going to be a lot of attention on the team. I think they really need to get 2026 right. But at any rate, they looked with these guys with these moves, and I don't know how much flexibility they have to do anything, nor do I think they should do anything.
Frank, if you want to start it off.
Well, I'm just saying, you're saying with the roster, you're saying don't, how much, you can't do that much with the roster, right? Anyways. So, really, I mean, this team, I think we're kind of losing sight of this team's actually pretty close to being okay. But soccer's about being close. Everything's close. So it's really close. I think they just needed to get over the top by bringing in somebody that could score goals. If your leading striker, scorer has 4 goals, you're probably not going to do that well. I mean, they're doing pretty well, really, to not have anybody finishing goals off. Chancalay has been coming on a little bit lately. So it's all been good on paper and all that sort of thing. So they're actually pretty close to maybe being okay. But there's dynamics, there's tension there's the locker room. Do guys, will they come out and give that effort, or do they still believe in what's going on, and do the supporters, so these are factors on the outside. If you're just just doing it on paper, if this was just theory, fantasy football, you'd probably go along and you'd be okay. But I think these other intangibles are going to come into play. And something's got to be done. You got to, like you say, start thinking about 2026. Is this team going to be? Is this coaching staff going to be there for 2026?
By the way, I love the Porter Burner account in the chat.
I love that. No, I kind of building off kind of what both you said. I'll start first with Dor Turgeman. I know, Julian, you said that the team shouldn't really rush into making a signing if they can. I will say, Dor Turgeman's been linked to the Revs since last June. So this is a player that's been on the Revs' radar for well over 13, 14 months. I believe so Razamir, he's a journalist out in Israel. He had reported that Austin FC, as well as New England and Real Salt Lake, were interested in Turgeman last year. At that time, looking at my article from when I wrote it back then, teams were willing to play around 5 to 7 million for him. And he's a young striker, 21 years old. At the time, he's again been playing with Maccabi Tel Aviv, and he's been representing the Israeli national team. He's played many games on the under 23s with Eli Feingold. So those two know each other really well. And I wouldn't be surprised if conversations have been had between Eli and Dor and been like, hey, like, how's New England? How's MLS? Because I've been linked to them for 13 months. You just went and did it. Like, you're there now. Tell me how that experience is. And I wouldn't be shocked if that conversation's been had. And again, we've spoken to Eli in the locker room, and he said that at times he's represented Israel and been the captain. When he's not there, Dor is the captain of that under 23 team. So they know each other. They probably talk often. So he's a player that a lot of teams are interested in. Rangers is one that has been interested in them. A couple other teams in Europe have been looking, but last season he had 9 goals and 1 assist in 35 games. That's pretty good in Israel. But at the same time, will that translate into MLS? And can you be consistently in scoring goals? That's 2 important questions to be asked.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Frank.
I guess I'll weigh in. I think there's dozens of strikers out there. They're not necessarily wanting to come to MLS or available, but, I'd get a guy that's from a little bit closer by. You lose these guys for national team games. I think Eli didn't even go back the last time he got called because of, it wasn't a good situation for him. But he would if they made it a good situation. So you lose guys then. I don't know, man. He's been a really good find. You get guys where you can, but I think they've made it really hard on themselves, bringing in some of these players. It's hard on them. That's one of the reasons I think for the team, like not doing well this year. These guys are really had trouble getting acclimated to what's going on here. And you bring in so many guys. It was 15, now it's 17 new guys and 21, like I said, over the last 12 months, I think it is. So that's a lot, and I just don't think they've been able to acclimate to what's going on here. And also you got to develop chemistry too, which is something that it's up to the coach, but it's also one of those intangibles. How do you develop chemistry if you're bringing in that many guys? Sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't. It just really hasn't clicked that well here.
Well, so I'm trying to figure out if you guys agree with me or not. Maybe it's not something that we need to agree or disagree with. The situation around like what should they do, right? Should they go after a guy? It doesn't have to be Dortürgerman. It could be somebody else. But what do you do? I think if they were to do anything right now, it just seems like it would be rushing, right? It's not like they're making additions for the sake of making the playoffs or being a contender. Like right now, if they make a move, it's because number one, they probably do genuinely think it's going to make a difference on the field. And number two, I think for some of these guys in the front office, they want to show that they're taking action, they're taking initiative. Maybe we can't fire Caleb Porter today, but we sure as hell can show that we're going to sign Matt Turner and get linked to all of these international strikers. If you do make this transaction, and again, doesn't have to be for Dortürgerman, it could be for anybody else, it could be for Patrick Cutrone, right? If you make that move, you either have to move on from a DP, so Carlos Heel isn't going to go anywhere. Matt Turner is now not going to go anywhere. Maybe Chankalai goes somewhere. Or you sign a U22 guy. Now, you could sign a U22 guy. You've got the flexibility to do that. Maybe you find a way to open up cap space or do what you need to do. But you're signing a guy who's 22 years old, and you're expecting him to come in and score goals. Like, I think that's a risk. I think it's better to just wait and really get the guy that you want at the right price point, who's going to be a good fit, who's going to work and kind of have that team chemistry, like Frank is saying. I just think that like if you were to do anything major right now, it would just be drastic.
Yeah, and kind of building on what you were just saying, like getting a young guy. Like you got Leo Campana as your striker right now. He's 25. He just turned 25. He's considered a young guy. He is. And again, you paid $2.5 million for him, and he has what, 4 goals this year? Is that correct? He's got 3.
That's right. Yeah.
4. So again, it's very concerning. I think if the Revs are going to make any move in this decision, it's got to be a smart one. There has to be thought behind it. I would be for them signing Dortürgerman. I think that's a good move, especially as a U22, especially with the roster constraint that they're currently in with the 3DP, 3U22. That would fit well to have Langoni, Turgeman, and Feingold in as the 3U22s. I think that'd be good for the team. And then again, if you don't sign Ignatius Ganago and you bring down Matt Turner, you then can go into the 2DP 4U22 route and get more GAM to fix your roster. So there's a lot of uncertainties, obviously, with this team, with the back end, with the transfers. But right now, I think in this window, if I'm the Revs, can I look to give the team more cap is number one. Can I offload a player that isn't being utilized or used at all and use that space somewhere else? And 3, can I fill a position of need? I think that's the questions, and those are the questions that need to be answered by this organization during this window.
So it's interesting because in the Bruce Arena era, they were also really good at cutting ties with players that just, for whatever reason, it didn't work out, right? They cut Alex Butner and Christian Mafla, and they bought out Josie Altidore. So all these things happened, right? Like they took the initiative, they made it happen. They also found a way to get mutual termination when they needed to. So to your point, Caleb, I think if you can do anything this summer, it's got to be to get some exits, right? You look at Jackson Ewell making $1 million a year. I forget who in the chat brought it up, but it might have been Porter, actually. That's a lot of money for someone who's played in a handful of games. I think now, yeah, right, so across all competitions, probably 8 games. I think at this point, you now have 4 goalkeepers on your roster. I know that Alija Ivicic is only signed through 2025, but maybe you find a way to dish him in the summer to a team that needs a backup or someone willing to take a chance on a new starter, just to do something. And those are like the two big ones for me. I think it is tough when you go into the summer with the team being as it is and you try to force in more offensive pieces. This team is overloaded with offensive players. They just aren't really turning up. And so that would, in my opinion, create more bloat. Because if you sign an offensive guy now, theoretically, you're signing him on at least a 3-year deal. And so I don't know how that would compute with what's going on with Langoni and Campana, and Diaz is cheap, but he's up there too. Chankalai, Ganago, and so on and so forth.
We're going to pitch in here too. There's not that many. This isn't an attractive situation to come to right now, really. I mean, if you're looking, guys looking to come, I think it's a tough sell. Like there's a lot of guys, I think I'll use Patrick Adjemong as an example. A year ago, he had the same offers, almost as good as he had this year, but they were from lower, teams that weren't maybe fighting relegation. Now, guys are going to look and he turn them down wisely to get on a solid team. So, European guys coming here are going to look at this situation and you're going to tell them there's no relegation, but they're still going to look at that standing and they say, well, let's let it play out here. I maybe not want to come to that team because, if they're struggling, if there's doubts about the coach, that sort of thing, if there's anything like that, I think it's a tough sell. By the way, we're getting good chat from
Yes.
supporters of Buchner and Buxa. Those are two guys that if you get guys like that, I think that would solve the problem. Buxa would do it. It'd have to be the Buxa, not his brother Alexander.
And I'm going to chime in as well very quickly because I know you mentioned Alija Ivicic. He is signed through 2025, but he does have an option through 2026. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, his contract is automatically picked up if he meets certain metrics. I would be baffled if he has not met those metrics by now. Correct. So I would assume Alija Ivicic is under contract already for 2026, which then you have a concern. Bono is signed through 2026. Matt is obviously here through the summer of 2026, potentially longer. And then obviously you have Donovan Parisian, who's signed through 2026 with options for 27 and 28. He's the current starter of Reds too, with JD Gunn there as well. JD Gunn will be out of contract, I believe, at the end of this year. So you have a lot of uncertainty at that position. I think the Revs, again, Alija Ivicic, I don't think will be comfortable being the backup. I think he either is moved via trade, and
it's a matter of time.
If there's not an option via trade, he's going to get bought out or waived. It's going to happen. And kind of the same thing with someone like Jackson Ewell. Again, under contract through 2027 with options for 2028 and 2029. Jackson Ewell, I believe, is the same thing. One of the reasons why we haven't seen him play, he, I believe, as well, has a metric in his contract that will see him receive a raise if the metrics are met. It's one of the reasons why I think Jackson hasn't been playing in games. So you take all those into consideration, and this team already is against the cap. Now raise their salaries. Now that is a lot of questions. Player like Matt Polster. Matt Polster was going to go up in salary this year, but then signed a contract extension that changed his whole salary. So there's a lot of questions to be asked about this org. Like there's only one player that is out of contract at the end of the year, and I'm pretty sure that's Brandon Bye, who also is a very movable asset for a team that might need a right back at a chance to, hey, we got 3 months. Let's see what you can do. You want to play for a contract? Because, again, that's what the Revs did last year. They traded Henry Kessler, who was on a $1 million contract, for a player oh, my God, I'm blanking on his name right now. Who's the center back? Tim Parker. Thank you. Tim Parker to play for his contract. And what happened there? The Revs didn't pick him up. He went back to Red Bull. Like, there's a lot of questions to be asked about this team, but in my opinion, I think Yule is a big concern right now. Ivicic, I think, gets either traded or bought out or waived. Like those are my biggest concerns right now in this window.
I think Ivicic is easier to move than Yule, which is why I would assume that if they're going to try to buy anybody out, it'll be Yule.
Yeah.
Either that or they have big plans for a striker to come in as a DP or as a U22 player, and something happens with one of the wing players. But right now, my top candidate for a buyout is Jackson Yule, which, by the way, that would really derail his career in the sense that he would then be open and available for any MLS team to pick him up. And in all likelihood, what would happen to him is what happened to Josie Altidore at the end of his career, which is he just like sat on a list collecting a paycheck, but not really playing. And so just not really a great situation. Like I don't think it was the right fit. But at the same time, you also want to do right by the players. And good for Jackson Yule's agent for getting that contract.
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of just adding, I know you just said got to do right for the players. Like going back to it, Alja Ivicic was the starter for this team. He has been the starter for this team. He's been working diligently behind the scenes to get a green card, to not be an international on MLS rosters. Him and his wife have been trying to get a green card forever. And now they sign Matt Turner, and now they're going to either waive him or trade him. That's going to restart his process all over again. So, Alja Ivicic is a player I want to talk to right now. I want to know what's going on in his head, because I'm sure as hell he was not happy with the Reds signing Matt Turner.
Yeah, well, and the guy he replaced, Ravas, was they found a way to get rid of him fast. He went to a top team, and I think it was in Slovakia. But he had an out. Didn't take too long. Ivicic is in a really tough situation. That said, I do think it's easier I think Ivicic is a more sound investment for a team than someone like Yule. Just easier to move, and so that's good for Aljas in that sense. But at any rate, Frank, we haven't heard from you on this matter at all regarding Ivicic, and you. I mean, you actually did. You kind of got us on this tangent about making this a desirable location. The Revolution had kind of had shed the reputation that it was not a great place to go for your career, but stuff like this kind of brings back that perception.
Yeah, I think look at it's not right now. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of things working against the Revolution as a destination for sure. First of all, there's now 30 teams in MLS. I think 25 of them or whatever it is have their own stadiums and grass fields, and a lot of them have decent weather, and they're doing okay. So if guys want to come to MLS, it's I think Bruce Arena made this a destination. Matt Polster came back specifically because of Bruce Arena, and everybody picked up the phone if Bruce was calling, right? So that's not happening now. I think Caleb Porter was able to do that in Columbus and Portland. They brought in some good players. It's harder to do right now in this situation, and I don't know if I'm adding to what I said before, but at this point, like I said, no relegation. But still, it's not. You don't have that much going in your favor. What's the selling point? I think the selling point here has always been, for the last few years, Carles Gil. Who wants to play with Carles Gil? Well, who doesn't? So I think you could have used that as a selling point, and they have. A lot of guys have come here because of that, or partly because of that. But right now, I don't think they've used that. They haven't maxed that out. They haven't brought over anybody from Spain, for instance, that would, click with Carles Gil or whatever. A few guys have clicked with Carles, but not that many. And now it's probably too late because it's just too late in the season, and it's just not a good situation. But I think that's really the one selling point that the Revolution have.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say really quick that card is getting really hard to keep playing because Carlos Gil is getting older. I mean, his play on the field doesn't show it necessarily, but he's one guy out of 3 DPs who's consistently consistent. And, now he's well over 30, and I think it is starting to show. And he is very easy to double team.
Yeah, kind of just building on that as well. Like, yeah, Carlos is 32 years old. He does have a contract through 2026, has an option for 2027. So he is still here, quote unquote, long term. But looking at the bigger picture and looking at where Carlos has played, like, it's kind of surprising that we haven't had someone from the days where he's played overseas come play with him again. Like, he played at Valencia. Nacho's really the only exception. Like, he's played in Valencia, he's played in Elche, he played at Aston Villa, he played at Deportivo La Coruña. How is there not another Spanish player on this team that has played with Carlos Gil or played against Carlos Gil before? And, like, how is that chemistry not there? Like, this team has a lot of, like, Argentinian players, and they've done that through Chancalay, through Langoni. You have Urrutia now. So it's cool to see, like, okay, those guys get it. Like, that is a bonded structure. Those 3 are tight knit.
Well,
why don't we have that for Carlos Gil? Where's Carlos Gil?
The big news today is so we go from Matt Turner being like the headline news on Friday, and then today we see that Fabrizio Romano puts out that Son Heung-min is coming to LAFC. And to be honest, I actually watched the Heung-min Son press conference live. I just happened to catch it, and I was like, oh, like, this is like a fantastic player who's totally going to stay in Europe. Like, some really strong team with a great fan experience and like a great storied, just great story traditions is going to totally snap him up, and he's going to be great. I thought he had a lot more mileage in Europe before he'd ever consider coming to MLS. And I'm telling you, to Caleb's point, I think clearly Hugo Lloris picked up the phone and was like, hey, come play with me in LA. It's awesome. Same thing with Bale. So at any rate, obviously that's a really extreme example because, you're looking at one of the best attacking players in the world against who at the time was one of the best goalkeepers in the world. But the fact that Carlos Gil hasn't picked up the phone, or at least he has, and nothing's really come of it, that says a lot to me as well. And it's the thing that we keep getting back to, right? It's how hard it is to recruit players when you're playing at Gillette Stadium. Maybe Bruce Arena was the exception to the rule, but this era is starting to feel a lot like the one before Bruce Arena.
Yeah, Bruce will always be the exception that proves the rules. So we're lucky. The Revolution's lucky that he was here for 4+ years. It's pretty hard and a tough act to follow too, by the way, as we're finding out. It's been that way everywhere Bruce was. Same thing with the Galaxy. After he left, things didn't go so well for a while. We'll do some ancient history there on this, maybe before Caleb's time a little bit. But Christian Benteke probably would have come here, to play with his old Aston Villa teammate, but it just never happened. And Bruce absolutely might have signed off on that, but it was one of those things that just didn't happen. So, but there's been, I'm sure, a ton of other guys that could.
Well, that's always happens here, though, Frank. Come to New England, coached by Paul Mariner.
Yeah. There's been a huge history on that. I guess it goes way back. I'm trying to minimize it because look, it's tough in those jobs. Everybody's trying to do the best they can, bring in guys, and they got their contacts, they got their guys, and they bring them in, right? So it's easier to look from the outside. But there have been a ton of guys that did come to MLS and didn't come to the Revolution that wanted to come to the Revolution. So. That's not on this current administration because a lot of the stuff happened long before they got here, but it's part of the story of the Revolution.
Yeah, I think also just touching on that, like obviously trying to make New England a premier destination. I don't know if you guys spoke about it on your last episode or in general. Jermaine Jones, very outspoken this past, I believe, week or 2 weeks about how he was headstand on going to Chicago, and then backdoor deals ended up on a fake coin flip for him to get to New England. Like, that just kind of proved the thing that New England was not his destination at all, and he got forced to come here. Like, it's kind of interesting to see the bigger picture.
I agree that that's not the greatest PR for the Revs, but he's been singing that song since 2014.
Yeah,
But nobody else who was involved, including like the agents who brokered the deal, really fully buy into Jermaine's perspective. Do I think the blind draw was messed up? Yes. And the reason why I think it was messed up is because it hasn't been done since, and it won't be done again. But
now it's trades for discovery rights that cost $400,000.
Well, that's exactly what should have happened.
Yeah,
that's exactly what should have happened. That would have solved everything, and really taken kind of like, because at the time MLS still wasn't publishing a lot of the things that we take for granted now. Like, teams weren't publishing contract lengths. They weren't publishing option years. They wouldn't even. You could bring them a salary from the players' union and be like, "Yeah, I'm not even going to acknowledge that you're bringing facts to me. That doesn't exist. That's in a different universe." But now we have something. Anyway, my point is that I think it was bad PR, but I just wanted to raise that I don't think, based on the other people in the room, that it was a super nefarious thing with Jones. I think the reason why we got Jermaine Jones was in part because of Jonathan Kraft's son being really annoying to the coaching staff and saying, "Hey, we should totally try to sign Jermaine Jones."
Well, no, it wasn't. I think it was the coaching staff. Just Jacob, go tell Jonathan that.
Right.
Make this deal, and Jacob was wise enough to say, "Yeah, that makes sense to me too." I think it's okay to hijack guys. They hijacked him here, fine. That's what other teams do. I think it's worked against the Revolution so many times. They usually kind of go by the rules or whatever's the MLS rules are, and they don't get their guy. So that was one where they, flipped the script a little bit and it got them to the MLS Cup final, and they should have built on that, to tell you the truth. So they're not comfortable with doing things that way. They needed to go double down on that. They had Jermaine Jones here, man, and he had another year left. So you needed to bring in two more guys like that, and then you would have 3 DPs, and you might have gotten something done. Instead, it just fell apart again. So I don't. It's not a consistent way to go. Like, I think LAFC, some of these teams in Miami, they do that all the time, right? They're going to get the best guys, and I think they're going behind the scenes or whatever they're doing, bending the rules. But I think the supporters would go for that here, but I just don't see that happening again.
Yeah, play dirty. At least play.
Well,
you play to participate or play to win.
I think the difference between MLS and other sports in this country is everybody knows that the other NHL, NFL, those guys, every team is trying to get the best guy in the world, the best players they can. MLS works against itself, and so you can't do that, really. But some teams like LAFC, I think they say, we're going to try to get the best guys in spite of that. A lot of the new ownership coming in, those are one of them. Miami, those guys are coming in. They're saying, let's try to do that, at least get that mentality going, so people think we're at least trying, because we want to bring in the best guys if we possibly can do it. And if you look like you're doing it, maybe it can happen. Miami, LA, it's easier to do there, but I think supporters end up being compromised, and they just kind of settle for lower standards because everything works against you. New York could probably bring in guys. Maybe the Revolution can't. But I think if you try to bring in guys, there hasn't been a profile guy really come to New England for a long time. That also makes it hard to get publicity. We write, still mainstream media. I can't even write a story about the guys they're bringing in, even though some of these guys are good. I like them. But, you got to bring in a guy that people have heard of, or at least try to go for that. And I think Bruce started out doing that, with the Butners of the world, Buxa, Bo, a couple other guys came here and tried out, whatever. And then they backed off that. I think he got discouraged and said, look, these guys aren't coming. So, so it's hard. But I'd like to see him go more in that direction.
Yeah, kind of just building off the point, like Frank said, liking to see teams hijack players. I think the one time that we've really seen like a team really hijack it, at least fans as well as journalists, was if you watched MLS Onside on Apple TV. Charlotte FC were in there for Marco Royce, and then they showed, I forget the president's name off the top of my head from LA, but he was like, "Oh, Charlotte want Royce? Let's try it." And they went to London and hijacked the deal. And the whole thing, if you haven't seen Onside, they'd show all the behind the scenes of how Charlotte were ripped they were so angry about the behind the scenes backdooring of that deal. Like, I wish the Revs did that, but how easy is that for how easy is that for them to do that in comparison to an LA, a New York, a Miami, and get a player done, or a team that has a soccer specific stadium that's playing on grass, as Frank mentioned earlier. Like, the Revs need the stadium, they need a location in Boston, they need a big name player. But who would you say is the biggest signing from outside of MLS to come to the Revs?
Well, so now we're going. Now we're full
it,
circle, Caleb, because right now I think the biggest name player on the Revolution is Matt Turner.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's either Matt Turner or probably Jermaine Jones. Like, who's next?
Oh, all time, maybe I could see it being Twelman. I could see it being Dempsey. Although Dempsey,
I'm talking about outside of MLS. From outside of MLS to here, who's the biggest name?
Outside MLS, oh yeah, probably Jones or Turner at this point. Maybe Heel.
Like, unless you're going way back, do you want to go way back on this or not?
As far as back as we can.
Zenga's a big one.
Zenga was bigger than the whole league when he came here, so that's a different era. But everything that MLS did to set up the whole bylaws, everything is set up to avoid competition for signings for everything, really. And the reason it was put in because they didn't feel there was enough experience and administrators to do. They needed controls. They wanted to have a salary cap. They didn't really have a handle on how to set up a budget and that sort of thing. They also didn't want to get into bidding wars, which is what happened with NASL a little bit. It happens all over the world, by the way. There's hijackings and dirty business, stab in the back all over the place. It's ugly out there, guys. So, but it's not so much with MLS. So, and I think they want to keep it that way. But I think that'll eventually break apart because there's sort of, you might call it natural laws of soccer and of sports and free enterprise that are going to enter into this. And, guys are, the new owners coming in, are good with the salary caps and they can live with that. I think they want to get rid of all the other TAM and all the gobbledygook, whatever those initials are, get rid of that stuff. And then that opens up a little bit more, and then I think it'll get a little more competitive to get players and that sort of thing, and maybe less restrictions on that sort of thing. I think that's got to happen, really. And I think that'll make the league better, by the way.
Yeah, and kind of just building off of that, because just talking about the conversation as a whole, you look at the Revs, their best three are Jermaine Jones, Matt Turner, Walter Zenga, right? You look at, again, I guess it's newer to us, but you look at a Miami. They've brought in Messi, Suarez, Alba, Busquets, and Rodrigo de Paul. You look at LAFC. They've brought in Vela, Chiellini, Bale. Now they're bringing in Heung-min Son. You look at Lloris. You look at, like, even Red Bull. Like, Choupo-Moting's pretty huge. Emil Forsberg's pretty huge. You then broaden it. They brought in Bradley Wright-Phillips. They brought in Thierry Henry. Even though he's the worst DP in MLS history, they brought in Rafa Marquez, but that's huge compared to Walter Zenga, Jermaine Jones, Matt Turner. Like,
I think, the Red Bull model actually, I think, is one that the Revolution with the right management could work. I think they tried to go the Miami LA route by getting Thierry Henry. And I think Thierry Henry was a great ambassador for the league, and he came in and he played, with the exception of the Gillette Stadium turf. But he came in and he played and he scored goals. But they realized that it's a tough media market. It's way too competitive. It's a small stadium at the end of the day. We were just there. It's also a horrendous stadium. I mean, just such a bad facility.
What, Red Bull? Red Bull's
terrible.
It's not as bad as Chester, Pennsylvania, but it's pretty bad.
But so anyway, I think that's sort of the route that I could see the Revolution going into, where you get like a really established European talent. You look at the Dor Turgeman rumor. Now, this isn't everything, but his transfer value right now is, somewhere around $4 or $5 million, which, like, if you're the Revolution, you're a small fish in a really, really big pond. So to avoid those really, really big name players, to avoid those bidding wars, you go after guys like that. And, Forsberg is just a bigger profile. Like, if you had to pay a transfer fee for him, it wouldn't be $4 million. And there's something about playing the game that way that I think has never really, I agree, Frank. I think Bruce really wanted to change that mindset. They were really big on saying how Gustavo Bo was the most expensive signing in team history when it happened. I thought that was just a sign of where they wanted to go. So it's like, Dor Turgeman could be a great signing. You've got teams that make signings for free all the way up to $100 million every year. And there's a lot in between, obviously. But the fact that the Revolution are kind of stuck in this one model of getting certain types of players is, I think, tough. Even Carlos Heel. I mean, Carlos came for less than $3 million. Like one of the best, $3.5 million. Yeah, for the best, arguably the best playmaker in MLS history. And yeah, you can do a lot of damage at that rate. But even so, I think then when you start getting a little bit higher, you start to get those guys that people have heard of. And I think maybe that's your point too, Frank, where it's like, yeah, Carlos Heel is a great player and he's built a name in New England, but he didn't come in with one.
Yeah, that's part of my point too. But I'm going to also say, I think where it's going now is like getting Leo Messi was a great pickup, but Leo Messi wasn't coming here alone. He said, look, I'm coming there, but you got to bring all my guys with me. And they said, well, we can only bring 3 or 4. He says, all right, bring as many as you can and keep them coming because, I'm not coming there alone. It doesn't work that way. And I think other guys are going to maybe look at that. Other teams should look at that model too, because then you got something. Like if Leo Messi was down there with that Miami team that they had a couple of years ago, it would have been a total disaster, right? I mean, that place was falling apart, and he wouldn't have had the, Busquets to him the ball. You got to have that, and I think that's a good way to go too. So instead of just getting like one random guy, like I think the Red Bulls have a little bit of a structure because they have a way to play. They're affiliated with other Red Bull teams, so they kind of have a little bit of that. You're not just bringing in a guy random. There's too many random things. I think that's one thing about this Revolution roster build. Guys were brought in to spec. They're all spec that the way Caleb Porter wanted guys to be, but there's not any chemistry necessarily. You want to bring in guys that have some common background. And I think that's maybe a little harder to do if you're not affiliated with like Red Bull or what some other teams have that affiliation. I think you want to kind of go in that direction, but at least I think that's a good way for the Revolution to kind of build on this and maybe learn from what's happened here by just bringing in a bunch of really good individual parts that don't mesh.
Frank, I think for Christmas this year, I'm going to get you a nightlight, my friend. We are just right at time. I wanted to give everybody a last word.
I'm fading here.
Oh, Frank, you don't have to move, my man. Oh my God, you're like a thief in the night. Caleb, you get the last. Your last word first.
Yeah, I just hope that.
Well, I guess let me make a target. What are you looking? In your mind? What does success look like for the Revs this week? They start with Turner coming in, and then they've got this big alumni game, hosting DC United on the 9th. What does real success look like for you? That is like at least trending in the right direction. Real success
for me is a 3-0 win against DC United. Leo Campana scores a brace. The alumni leave or they're happy. Turner has a great game in net. You have a good shutout against a very, 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 very bad DC United team. Anything less than a win against DC, it's a failure. Even a draw against DC is a failure. I think, honestly, if you draw against DC this week, your season's over. It just is. I already think the season is over for New England, but this will be the third nail with one more nail waiting for the coffin. This team needs to win on August 9th. Anything short of that is a negative, and it would be nice to have a Turner shutout and Campana to actually score goals.
Fully agreed, and I want to add to that, but Frank, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay, I think the Revolution definitely have to win this game. I don't think a draw is even acceptable, but I think it can be done. But I think it depends on the availability of one Christian Benteke. I think if he's playing, I think the Revolution could be in big trouble. If he's not, they should win, and they basically it's that's kind of a must win, even though I usually don't use that term because there's no relegation, So, but it's kind of a must win just for credibility's sake.
I agree with both of you. I want to build off of what Caleb said. The only thing that I'm going to add that it's a little bit different is I remember the first game after Brad Friedel left. The Revolution convincingly beat the Earthquakes. I think it was the final score was 3-1. And you got back into the locker room and the team had a lot of swagger. The team had a lot of togetherness. They weren't really they were really different than anything we had seen until that point in the season. And it was kind of like this personification of something that Scott Caldwell said, which was that they felt they were better than the results showed. And so what I want to see on Saturday is that, they get the win. They get the job done. The fans go home happy. Preferably it's a 3-0 win and a shutout, and Campana or some other goal-starved player gets a goal. But I just want to see them really look like winners in the locker room, and that you have that togetherness, and that you feel like, okay, they mathematically probably can't make the playoffs, but it's going to be really fun watching them try. And that you feel like a page is turned. So for me, it's more of an optical thing.
That's a good call. I'm going to I think we're signing off pretty soon, but I wanted to give a shout out to Caleb on his ancestry here too. But I'm not sure if everybody knows that or if you want to throw it out there, but Caleb has some good creds in the history department in soccer that, not everybody knows about, they should know about at some point.
Yeah, no, I guess I'll leave the little inkling. So the best man at my godfather's wedding, or sorry, great uncle's wedding, my apologies, was Ferenc Puskás. So I have a lot of connections to Hungarian football. If you want to read or hear about my family history, you can search the last name Pongratz in Hungary, and probably one of my uncles will come up for the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. So I have a lot of background in Hungary and a lot of footballing background from Hungary as well. So yeah, a lot of history. Nice
Great.
to bring that up, Frank.
Yeah, that's a great plug, Frank. Very good. Well, this has been a lot of fun. It's definitely different with the three persons in the chat. But Caleb Pongratz, he's the writer for Prost America. I think what are you, at Caleb Pongratz on X?
It's at Caleb Pongratz 10. So that's the @ Caleb CALEB PONGRATZ 10 on X, and then at Caleb Pongratz on Blue Sky as well.
Very good. And then we've got, of course, the legendary Frank DeLappa of the Boston Globe at Frank DeLappa, and then I'm Julian Cardillo, currently of the Boston Herald, at Julian Cardillo on X. Thanks everybody for tuning in, for jumping into the chat. And we will see you next time.